Hi, I'm George Ramelkamp. I'm the bicycle workshop manager for Cycling Plus and Bike Radar. We've come across a rather exciting new piece of equipment with the upcoming cyclocross season. We thought we would give you a little preview about the product and its installation. So have a look at this. What we have here is the new Parabox by TRP. It's a cable to hydraulic brake conversion kit, which includes master cylinder unit and a couple of hydraulic calipers. You get the discs as well and the mounting hardware. It's a rather interesting unit, and they're the first ones out of the blocks pretty much. So the first thing we're going to do is clear the decks and get the parts off the bike so we can start with a clean slate. That'll involve removing the brakes, the wheels. Now that the brakes have been opened and the wheels removed, we're going to release the cables and take the brake calipers off. Now ideally, the brake will simply remove from the post, but sometimes that post and the screw, the bolt that holds it in place, get seized up and the whole thing comes out. On the front of the bike, there'll probably be a cable hanger that's removable, so you'll want to get rid of that. And if at all possible, you can get rid of the post mounts on quite a lot of frames and forks. So removing these posts can make the bike look a lot cleaner, but make sure that your spanner is a good tight fit around the flats. They're quite easy to strip if they're tightly screwed into the fork blades. It might be difficult to find decorative caps for canty-boss removal at a bike shop nowadays, but you can also just make do with a little bit of electrical tape. So you'll want to repeat the same process for the rear brake as well. Now we're going to offer up the master cylinder and see what the clearances are, and go ahead and remove the stem and just try to get this thing on there. You probably need to know that these hydraulic lines are sized to an average size frame, probably about a 56 centimeter bike, but there's a possibility that you might have to shorten them, in which case you would want to take them to an experienced mechanic at your local bike shop, or if you feel confident enough doing it yourself. The next step is going to be the installation of the rotor or disc. Now these come with some thread lock that keeps them from loosening up. But in severe climates like the UK, a little bit of grease on a thread will help prevent these bolts from getting seized up. Now whatever you do, don't get this grease on your rotor. When installing your rotors, always pay attention to the orientation. There's usually a small arrow to indicate in which direction they should go. Once you're done installing the bolts, you should probably put a little more torque into them with a regular L-shaped Torx wrench. Repeat the same process for the rear disc. Now that we've installed the discs, we're going to put the wheels back on the bike. Check that the rotor clearance is adequate and that it's not hitting the fork blade, and offer up the calipers. Keep it a little bit loose so you can make adjustments. I'm now eyeballing the brake pads over the rotor so that it's centered correctly, and now just lightly nip up the bolts to hold it in place. So now route your cable accordingly through the frame and do the same for the rear caliper. So now that you've installed the calipers and wheels, get some trusty zip ties and loosely tie up your hydraulic lines. So the TRP system comes with these little feeder noodles into which you plug in your brake cable. So we're going to offer this up and put a little mark in the cable and then go ahead and cut. So this thing fits in this hole over here. Here's the brake outer, and we'll cut a little bit long. Just going to put a little mark so I can see where I'm at. I think I've pulled the cable out far enough I can make a cut now. Then you can just grab a metal file and put a few strokes across, flatten out the end of the outer. In this case, the noodle barrel adjuster requires a ferrule. So now that you've got your front cable outer cut to the correct size, you can move on to taking care of the rear brake. Now to thread the cables through, it's probably going to be easier if we pull the noodles away. Let's feed the brake cable back in there. So if you're satisfied that your cable is nicely cut, you can go ahead and reinstall the ferrule and then thread it into the noodle. Now it sometimes helps to give it a little spin in the direction of the cable winding. That'll help feed it through the curve. Make sure that all of the cable ends and ferrules are correctly seated. So now, while immobilizing the anchor assembly with a 9mm open end, you can tighten the grub screw. In this case, it's 2.5mm Allen key. Don't overdo it, but it should be pretty snug. So as before, you can now repeat the same process for the rear brake. So now that you're satisfied that the cables are correctly anchored and your calipers are approximately positioned over the rotors with the bolts nipped up, we can give the brakes a little try, give them a squeeze. Well, that feels pretty good. And now we're ready to cut and crimp the cable inners to prevent fraying and tidy everything up. Go ahead and take it for a small test spin so you can make minor adjustments. And after that test ride, you should probably recheck all the nuts and bolts before riding it properly. So look out for a review on Bike Radar where we put the Parabox conversion through its paces.